Hola from Sweden. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this talk. My name is Gudrun Ericson, and I'm going to present our Swedish experiences from holistic peer analysis of national tests in relation to the CEFR. First of all, an outline, which is very C-centered. I'm going to say something about the context, about the construct, which is a combination of the curricula in Sweden and the role of this and the CEFR. I'm going to describe briefly our collaborative studies on the relationship and arrive at some conclusions, and also say a few words about the challenges, some of the challenges that we've encountered. Context then. Sweden is a large country geographically in the north of Europe with about 10 million inhabitants, a fifth of them born outside Sweden, which means a lot of languages in society. One example of this is that about 170 different languages are taught in the Swedish compulsory school as part of the national curriculum. This is optional for students. English is mandatory from early years, and second foreign languages, still optional, come in school year 6 when the children are about 12 years old. And it's taken by about 85% of all students. And these second foreign languages are by far the most common are French, German, and Spanish is indeed the most popular one. We've got a 10-year compulsory school, which is mixed and inclusive, and 98% of all young people go on to upper secondary school, where they choose either a vocational or an academically oriented so-called program. Grades in 6 levels are awarded from school year 6, age of 12. Teachers are totally responsible for this practice, and to support them, there is an extensive national testing and assessment program, which is to be treated as an advisory tool. That is, the results of the tests are to be combined with teachers' continuous assessments. So teachers' agency is indeed strong in Sweden. The national tests are developed by universities commissioned by the Swedish National Agency for Education, and my own university in Gothenburg on the southwest of the country is responsible for foreign languages. The construct then, both for second language and foreign language, the syllabuses are highly communicative and functional, have been so since the early 1980s. And this may be partly explained by the fact that Sweden took a very active part in the work of the Council of Europe Language Policy Division as early as the 1970s. However, as we all know, the intended curriculum is not always the implemented or attained curriculum. So language teaching is not always in line with the functional approach in the Swedish curriculum. These curricula and the subject syllabuses are increasingly influenced by the CEFR. Textual alignment has been made in several rounds, but so far no large-scale empirical alignment. A typical national test comprises 3 subtests focusing on oral competence, receptive competence, and written competence. And there are extensive teacher guidelines, including oral and written benchmarks, and lots of materials to help teachers in their practices. Of course, we haven't made a formal empirical alignment, but still, drawing on experience from many years of work with the curricula and the tests, we have assumed that at the end of school year 9, the minimal pass level for English would be a low B1, and the minimal pass level for second foreign language, starting much later in the system, would be a low A2. And of course, in upper secondary school, levels go higher, and I refer you to the references at the end for that. To study this further, we have conducted 2 collaborative studies. The first one for English as a foreign language at the end of school year 9 compulsory school, with the aim of conducting, quote, a tentative study of the relationship between the national EFL test in relation to the CEFR with regard to content and tasks as well as to standards. The methods that we've been using has been very positive and mutually fruitful. We have had the test evaluated individually by 12 very experienced assessment specialists from 12 different countries, 11 of them in Europe. And by experienced, we mean both concerning test development and the CEFR. The results emerging demonstrated certain variability, which was expected, of course. Comments were mostly positive, differences were pointed out, of course, but importantly, the results confirmed our assumed minimal pass level as a low B1, both concerning content and standards. In general, the agreement among the informants was somewhat higher concerning content and tasks and standards in relation to the CEFR. Very much encouraged by this positive outcome of the first study, we went on to the second collaborative study, this time focusing on French, German, and Spanish, the second foreign languages, at the end of school year 9 and equivalent level in upper secondary school. The aim was similar to the EFL study, the method as well, but in this case, we didn't have 12 observers of one test, but 3 per language. So each test, French, German, and Spanish test, was evaluated individually by 3 very experienced assessment specialists from 3 European countries, South, Middle, and North of Europe. The results were variable to a certain extent, mostly positive, etc. But in this case as well, the results confirmed the minimal pass level assumed as a low A2 for the second foreign languages tests. One very interesting point that it was, in spite of thorough horizontal validation between the 3 languages in the test development process to ensure that the different tests are equally difficult, some perceived differences regarding performance standards emerged. More precisely, the French tests were regarded as more lenient and the German test as definitely harsher. This was nothing that could be seen in our data, but it's still interesting to hear it. Conclusions and challenges. As soon as we look at tests and other material from other sort of educational cultures, we're likely to be surprised. And the biggest surprises, I think, in our system, assessment system, is the fact that one test takes care of many grade levels and also the advisory function. But in general, there was a high degree of agreement regarding content as well as performance standards. Areas of disagreement between evaluators was, first of all, more of a sort of, test development generic type, namely concerning format and item types, degree of constructed selected response, for example, whether you can mix formats within the same task or not, and also concerning content, what degree of neutrality, whatever that is, in relation to controversy and emotion can you include in a text. What is a bit more, I think, general and a bit worrying from my point of view is that there was a somewhat surprising focus on linguistic accuracy in comments about student performances in relation to standards and levels in both studies, actually. Correctness seemed to play a very important role, and that was a bit surprising in relation to what we all have sort of in common in our construct, namely an action-oriented approach, a communicative, functional view of language. So this is something that we need to go on discussing all the time, of course. Finally, these tentative and explorative studies have been very interesting, very mutually sort of appreciated, I think I can say. But they should, of course, not be seen as alternatives to more traditional standard settings studies, etc., but as additions generating mutually important information. And that is sort of also goes nicely with the mission statement, the ethos of YALTA, which is actually to promote the understanding of theoretical principles of language testing and assessment and the improvement and sharing of practices. So thank you very much for listening to me. This is my email address and also 2 references, one text chapter, text which you might want to read if you're interested in learning more about the studies, and also the website, the link for the website of the National Testing Project, if you're interested in that. So thank you very much again, and goodbye.